Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Alex and my reading of Supernatural Night Terror by John Passarella. At the end of the last chapter, where they were investigating the killer tree, they discovered there'd been an escape from the prison nearby. Ragnar Barch, better known as Butcher Barch, or the Cleaver Cannibal. Is it real? Is it a nightmare? What's going on? Let's find out. I'm familiar with Barch, Sam said to Jeffries, because he thought an FBI agent should be aware of most wanted criminals, even after they were no longer at large. Anyone heard from the warden, Alden Webb? Chief's trying to reach him as we speak. Where was Barch spotted? 303 Perry Lane, Jeffries said. Off of Welker, near the cluster of hotels and motels, phoned in by Jailene Livengood. Got it, thanks, Sam said, ending the call. He gave Dean the details on Barch and the address of the eyewitness. Perry Lane's near our motel. Dean drove north towards Welker Street, wondering if this is real con or another manifestation. Either way, it's dangerous. It's what puzzles me about the trees. What? This whole perception as reality theory of yours, Dean said. People don't perceive trees as mobile, let alone murderous. Not usually, no. That tree looked like it pulled itself out of the ground and took a stroll. Dean caught the light at Welker and headed west. With 4 lanes of traffic instead of 2, he pressed down on the accelerator and zipped through town. Before it collapsed. And it's still there, Dean said. It's a real tree. Sam nodded grimly. Even the things that aren't real, he said. There seem to be more of them, and they're lasting longer. Dude, whatever causing this, it's getting stronger. And we're no close to figuring out what it is. With that sobering thought in their minds, they drove in silence until they reached Perry Lane. Sam spotted one house on the block lit up like a Christmas tree. Every light in every room on both floors was on, along with the lights on either side of the front door. Made it easy to read the address. That's it, 303. A police cruiser, light bar flashing, waited at the curb. As Sam and Dean walked towards the house, a tall African-American cop with a touch of grey at his temples and sergeant's stripes on his sleeves exited the house and walked towards the cruiser. Stopping when he spotted them, he hooked his fingers in his belt and said, "You're the gentleman from the FBI?" "Yes, we are," Dean said. "Could I see some ID?" "Sure," Sam said. After a long night, their FBI suits were looking more than a bit disreputable. Either that, or the man was overly cautious. "Agent Shaw and DeYoung," they said as they showed their laminates. "Sergeant Cornelius Harrison," the man said, extending his hand to Sam and Dean in turn. "Good to meet you. Miss Livengood reported a prowler." Dean looked at Sam, then back at the sergeant. "We heard she reported Butcher Barch on the loose." "She was mistaken about the ID," Harrison said. "Deputy Warden called the station. As of 5 minutes ago, Barch was still in his cell." "What about Webb?" "No word from the warden," Harrison said. "Chief sending a car to his home." He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at the house with the red-lined electricity usage. "She may have seen a prowler, but it wasn't Barch. I had 2 more units here. Searched the grounds and the house. Nothing. I'm heading back to the station. You're welcome to talk to her. I doubt she'll be sleeping any time soon." Harrison climbed into his cruiser and pulled away as Sam rapped on the door of the house. A moment later, the door opened a crack, revealing a security chain in place. A pale young woman with long black hair and wide grey eyes stared at them. "Jailene Livengood?" Sam asked. "Yes," he said, "and you are?" "FBI," Sam said. "FBI? Really? That was fast." "Already in town," Dean said. "The police were here and gone," she said. "They found nothing." "We have a few questions," Sam said. "Won't take long." "You got ID?" The brothers took turns holding their FBI credentials up to the gap in the doorway. She nodded, closed the door to remove the chain, then opened it again and waved them in. Locking the deadbolt and chain after her inside, she turned toward them and clasped her hands together. Without preamble, she said, "I saw Ragnar Barch, standing right in front of my house, and he had a meat cleaver in his hands, but the police don't believe me." Sam glanced around the living room, neat with the exception of small stacks of various newspapers, local, regional and national, along with separate piles of weekly news magazines. In stark contrast to the abundance of news, facts and figures in her reading material, her walls were hung with an assortment of what looked like original paintings of fantasy creatures and settings, centaurs striding through forests, mermaids reposing on rock clusters at shorelines, dragons sleeping in gold-strewn caverns. "How can you be sure it was Barch?" Sam asked. "I know his face," she said, nodding quickly, as if it were a nervous tic. "I was among the protesters when they added the Supermax wing. I keep track of who they bring into the base. I have their names, their court photos, and a list of their crimes. Well, at least the crimes for which they were convicted. Who knows what other heinous acts they committed? It's enough to keep you up at night." "You are up late," Dean observed. "Storms woke me," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Came down to watch a movie on cable. Looked out the window and saw him standing there. Would you like some coffee? I've already had 3. It's no problem." "No, thanks," Sam said. "Actually, I could use a cup." You just said no and then yes. Anyway, she hurried into the kitchen, and after a minute of clinking ceramic and stainless steel, she returned with a tray holding 3 cups of coffee, a container filled with packets of sugar and other sweeteners, and a small handled creamer. Sam drank his coffee as quickly as its temperature permitted and continued his questioning. "Did you happen to see where this man went?" "No, I ran to the phone, called the police. When I looked out the window again, he was gone. I checked all the doors and windows and closets. I know he's out there. According to Sergeant Harrison, Barch is in his cell." She rubbed her arms as if for warmth and nodded. "Yes, he told me, but I know what I saw." "You live alone?" "No, well, yes, right now," she said. "My roommate's a fantasy artist. She's at a convention in Denver. Won't be back until Monday." That explained the dichotomy between her reading material and the subject matter of the paintings. "If you like," Sam said, "Agent DeYoung and I could check out the exterior of the house again." "That would be awesome," she said. "Thank you." "No problem." After Dean downed his coffee, the Winchesters stepped outside. Sam waited as she locked and chained the door behind them. Dean walked to the Impala and brought back a pair of flashlights. "One more cup of coffee and she will literally climb the walls," Dean said as he slapped a flashlight in Sam's palm. "Think he might still be here?" "She saw a manifestation," Sam said. "It's possible." They pulled out their handguns. Sam took the left side of the house while Dean circled around to the right. The flashlight beam pierced the darkness, startling a cat that meowed indignantly and bolted across the lawn. Climbing the nearest fence and disappearing. Toward the back of the house, a back door light cast a wan glow that failed to extend to a padlocked tool shed at the back of the property. Sam caught movement to his right and swung the flashlight in that direction. Another flashlight answered his, momentarily blinding him. "Dean, Sam, so far all clear. Tool shed, padlocked. In back?" Sam walked along the left side of the galvanized steel tool shed as Dean approached to the right. The flashlight revealed a narrow gap behind the shed, possibly wide enough to hide a man, and this was the darkest part of the backyard. Sam stepped away from the side of the shed, approaching the back at a wider angle, when he heard a creak of metal from above. As his gaze darted upwards, he held his handgun beside the barrel of the flashlight, aiming them together. A hulking man-shaped silhouette rose above the roof of the shed. A footfall creaked against protesting metal. An instant later, the large man launched himself at Sam. His flashlight beam danced across a gleaming rectangle of metal held in the man's right hand. "I'll leave you there in suspense while I have a sip of tea." Alden Webb fought his way up out of a troubling dream and stared at the ceiling for a moment, trying to remember the dream and why it upset him before the hard, repeated knocking on his front door registered on his consciousness. The light from the television flickered across the ceiling of his bedroom, revealing an odd pattern of pulsing shadows that seemed to fade away as he became more alert. Shaking off the lethargy, he climbed out of bed and grabbed a robe from his closet. "Just a minute," he called out, but doubted the visitor could hear him. A few moments later he swung open the door to reveal a police officer standing there, fist raised, as if he intended to knock again, on Webb's face if necessary. "Is there a problem, officer?" He read the man's name tag. "Jarrett." "Chief Quinn sent me when you didn't answer your phone." "I didn't hear it ringing," Webb said, surprised he had slept through a ringing phone long enough to prompt a personal visit from one of Quinn's men. "What's wrong?" "We had a report that a Supermax con was loose in town," Jarrett said. "Ragnar Barch." "That's impossible," Webb said. Besides, I would have been notified of any incident. What if I missed that call as well? I'll call now. That's not necessary, Jarrett said. It was a false alarm. The deputy warden reports Barch is in his cell, but when you didn't answer your phone, Chief Quinn thought we should check on you. Of course, thank you, but I'm fine. I was sleeping. Deeply, I imagine, to have not heard the phone. Have a good night, sir. After the police officer left, Webb closed and locked his door. False alarm, he said, shaking his head, more like a crank call. After all this time, he thought he'd reached an accommodation with the townspeople. He knew they disliked having the prison nearby, but its record was immaculate, and over time he had hoped for peaceful coexistence. But that was looking like a pipe dream. Crank calls, he supposed, would be the order of the day now, another form of passive-aggressive protest from all those with a not-in-my-backyard attitude. Sam fell backward, his finger tightening against the trigger of his gun as the gleaming stainless steel blade of the meat cleaver arced towards his neck. The gun went off, and the round ripped into the galvanized metal wall of the tool shed. The manifestation of Butcher Barch had vanished an instant before the bullet left the muzzle of the gun. Dean came round the back of the shed, sweeping the area with his gun. "Sam," he called, "you all right?" "Fine," Sam said, rubbing his palm against the side of his neck. "Barch jumped me and vanished." "You got a good look at him?" "Just the cleaver," Sam said, as Dean helped him to his feet. "That was plenty." "You hit him?" "No." Sam grabbed his flashlight out of the grass. "Vanished in mid-air before the bullet could hit him. Did we tell the lady of the house?" "Not unless she heard the shot. Doubt he'll come back tonight." With dawn approaching, Dean started the Impala, thought about calling it tonight and heading back to their motel, which was only a few blocks away, but a missed opportunity had been nagging at him all day. He turned to Sam, said, "You up for one quick run?" "The garment factory? You got the address?" "Should be in my browser history," Sam said. He reached back over his seat and grabbed the laptop case, removed the computer and booted it. "From what I read, there's not much left." "You said they debated making the factory the site of the memorial?" "Yes, which means something's there," Dean said. "It's the elephant in the room, so let's not ignore it." Sam found the address and relayed the directions to Dean. The Clayton Falls Apparel Company was located on the western edge of town, less than half a mile from the site of the tarantula attack, but not much remained of the red brick building. As Dean parked across the street from what had been the entrance to the factory, even with its exterior bathed in the cold glare of streetlights, he had the impression of darkness. He climbed out of the Impala and stared at the factory, trying to get a sense of the place. Wrought iron fencing outlined the perimeter of the grounds, but here and there sections had collapsed or were about to fall over. At one spot it looked as if a bulldozer had rolled over the fencing to create a mound of debris, but the task had been abandoned. There was so much yellow police tape repeating the words "Danger" and "Keep out," zigzagging through the fencing, that Dean wondered if the tape was all that had held the rest of it upright. Most of the exterior walls were intact, but crumbling away from the top down, stained black from the fire and smoke. The entire roof was missing, having collapsed into the interior, and a wall on the left side was little more than a mound of damaged bricks. The building was dead, a bit of urban blight on the landscape, like the physical representation of a psychic scar on the collective consciousness of Clayton Falls. Something they were unwilling to let go. But was it responsible for the strange phenomena in the town? Slamming the trunk of the Impala, Sam joined Dean, carrying an EMF meter. "Ready?" Dean nodded. As they neared the building, Dean saw the freestanding wooden sign angled toward the path leading to where the front doors of the factory had been. The copper sheeting of the sign had tarnished over time, coated with a green patina, but Dean could make out the words engraved in the metal: Clayton Falls Apparel Company, established 1898. "Look," Sam said, pointing to the base of the sign. Bouquets of flowers, still fresh, encircled the sign's twin posts. Dean pointed at the open entranceway, which was home to several more bouquets and a few stuffed teddy bears. Not nearly as many visitors as the official memorial, but significant. "An alternate memorial," Dean said. "This place is condemned, but they refuse to tear it down. Got anything?" Sam turned on the EMF meter, swept it back and forth as they walked under the doorway. "Nothing yet." Dean looked up at the looming walls and the open sky overhead. Watch the falling bricks. What? Got our hard hats. The streetlights failed to penetrate the gloom inside the building. Dean found he had to keep his head down. The footing was treacherous. Loose bricks, burnt and charred joists, and partially melted or shattered industrial sewing machines littered the floor. Broken tables and the hulks of ruined cutting machines impeded their progress. A charred and crumbling staircase that was probably once attached to one of the partial walls led up to nowhere before terminating. Dean's flashlight beam startled a foraging rat, which promptly scurried away in the opposite direction. Throughout their examination of the interior, the EMF meter remained silent. After they completed a circuit of the factory, Dean said, "Okay, that was a whole lot of nothing. Worth a shot," Sam said, as he switched off the meter. And that is that. And we are now halfway through, because there are 33 chapters. So we're getting there. Join us to find out, well, will anything horrendous happen before the sun finally comes up? See you next time.